everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish on the Movies. And today we're reviewing another movie as part of our series, Is This Really a Kids Movie? And it's called Little Monsters, and it premiered in August of 1989. And I won't name all the stars, I'll just name a few of them. But Howie Mandel, who I don't think he's been in a lot of movies, he has a part and he plays Maurice. Then there is the Stevenson family, played by Daniel Stern as Glenn Stevenson. He's the dad. Margaret Whitten is Holly Stevenson. She's the wife. And then they have two boys, Brian and Eric. And Brian is played by Fred Savage, and his real life brother, Ben Savage, plays Eric.
Do you like Fred Savage?
He's very good at this time in his life, and I'll talk a little bit about that in here. He is a very good actor.
I don't like him.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever.
He doesn't act like a kid.
No, he doesn't actually, which is probably why he was pretty popular at this time in the 80s. But anyway, Little Monsters is a mishmash of story ideas that are incohesive and not fully thought out. It premiered in August of 1989, like I said, a time when I moved several times and did not have kids and did not care about kids' movies. Truthfully, I'd never heard about it until my second child was born, and it was at the video store or maybe the library too.
It was actually at Kroger. We bought it at Kroger because I liked the look of the cover.
Yeah.
And I watched it quite a bit.
On the cover is a picture of Fred Savage and Howie Mandel. I won't say another word about it. But anyway, at that time, I watched it with my second boy, Marco, and it seemed okay. But let's get into some of the story, which is hard because, like I said at the beginning, it's a garbage bag of mishmash. Daniel Stern, known for the skinny Home Alone crook, plays Glenn Stevenson. He and his wife Holly have these two boys who are played by these real-life brothers, which I think that was actually really nice that they could do a movie together. And it's important to note that Fred Savage, around this time, had been starring in a show called The Wonder Years, which I did occasionally watch, and Daniel Stern was the grown-up Fred who narrated the show from behind the scenes. Back to the quote story. The Stevensons have moved from somewhere, which is unclear where that is, to Massachusetts because of Mr. Stevenson's job. The move has clearly put the parents at odds with each other, which, again, another thing I didn't understand. Every night after the boys go to bed, the parents bicker loudly, making life weird for the boys, who have also had difficulties being uprooted from their own home and friends. It seems to be harder for Brian, the older brother, who is apparently a prankster and has to deal with a bully and just fitting in. And then there's the no-nonsense girl he seems to like too in his classroom. Lately, his little brother, who has made at least one good friend and doesn't seem to be having trouble there, but has had more problems adapting to his new house, especially his bedroom at night. He swears there is a monster in his room. He screams out and is truly frightened, waking the whole family. Of course, they don't believe him when he says that there's a monster. But weird things start happening around the house. For example, Brian's bicycle gets left out and his dad runs into it backing out of the garage. Then Dad pulls out a pint container of ice cream for the cupboard and its loose top falls off, spilling ice cream all over his clothes. Brian is immediately blamed for both incidents. He is known for getting up in the night and watching TV and eating snacks, And that was his bicycle, so of course he must have left it out there, right? No, he didn't do any of it, and nor did his little brother. But Brian can't convince his family. So knowing that something is weird going on, Brian decides to change rooms with his brother. Why not? There's nothing to this monster business, he thinks. But he hears noises during the night too, and sees a few objects out of place in Eric's room. So he sets an elaborate trap for whomever or whatever. Is there a monster or monsters? Marco.
Well, it's funny that you said he's a prankster. I challenge you to tell me one time in the movie that he intentionally pranked someone before the thing happens. Meaning before he meets the 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 before he meets the things and does all that stuff. I challenge you to tell me one instance where he pranks someone on purpose, because he's not a prankster at all. He's just kind of a kid who gets himself into bad situations. We see this one time where he throws this his brother's lunch out the window, and it accidentally hits this bully kid in the head. And then later on, he manages to get in a fight with this kid, and he gets blamed for it. And it seems like he's always the kid who gets blamed for everything, which I think that would be a really cool storyline. But there's so many different storylines to this movie. Nothing is executed and finished. Like, this is very reminiscent to It Chapter 2 in a sense. It a lot of kids movies suffer from this because the writers, they think that kids are so, they have such little attention spans that they constantly have to add something new to make things interesting, and they constantly have to keep changing things and doing these off the wall things to get kids' attention. And so by doing that, this movie really suffers. In the beginning of the movie, it feels like a movie all about moving to a new place. And then it feels like a movie all about these two brothers. And then it feels like a movie all about this bully. And then it feels like a movie about this. And then it feels like a movie about that. It never feels like one movie. It always feels like, in fact, I think that this movie could have been a good anthology movie. If you had set it up to where you'd have three different stories where three different sets of children were being pranked by these monsters, because that's what the whole movie's about. It's about these stupid monsters. They live in this world that is basically anarchy. It's basically, if you've seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's like the Foot Clan, where there's the arcades everywhere, and the kids are smoking cigarettes, and like really bad situations. And that's what Bernie has to say about this movie. I'm trying to make it so that he doesn't step up on the phone and ruin the recording. But anyways, uh, the world looks stupid. It doesn't look like an attractive world to live in. I would say that's problem number one. Whenever you have these movies where, oh, there's this new world that I want to be in. Oh, it's this place full of cool things. There's nothing cool in this world.
In
What
the
do you think,
monster world.
Sophie? Don't you agree? In the real world too, in this movie. But what do you think, Sophie?
I don't know. It reminds me of another kind of movie. Uh, uh, where it's a dystopian place and there's been a nuclear war or something. And
What?
it's
Oh,
just
the monster
the
world.
monster world. I mean, and it's like, well, it's obviously it's an underground world because the monsters pop out from underneath. It's like they're living in a never-ending basement, and the basement's full of all kinds of sparkly,
Or it's like they're living underneath the floorboards.
and it's dark. It's dark, always dark too. So that's why it reminds me of a place that's hit by a nuclear bomb, and but of course it's a
And
happy place. I mean, they're all goofy and happy,
but
and
you know what's really weird is that they they thrive themselves on having this world where there's all this anarchy and where you can do whatever you want. You don't have any parents telling you what to do.
hmm well,
But
another
then you have this whole evil organization of these certain monsters. I'm not going to give anything plot wise away, but it's clear that there's some sort of a system of a government there
or
of
it's a
these,
hierarchy.
or like a mafia type of thing where they have enforcers and they have the leader and they have like a torture chamber, and like that doesn't really go with your whole world concept.
Well, it's also not very child friendly.
Yes, it is.
No, not that severe where they're torturing people.
They don't really torture people in the movie though, which I wish they would have, because that would have made me like this movie. I would have loved to have seen a kid get tortured by one of these monsters, and by tortured, I mean like in a funny way, like in like a Beetlejuice type of a way, like
Mm.
to prank him or to make him do something bad, kind of like I'm not going to give anything away, but someone is made to do something bad, kind of, and that seems like torture to me. That was like a good torture scene. But again, that was a part of another plot that didn't go with the rest of the movie. But overall, I used to really like this movie as a kid, but I always got grossed out by some of the stuff. There's a scene where the monster he puts a cotton swab in his ear and there's this goo that comes out of his ear and he puts it in a jar and just ugh.
Ew.
And then there's this scene where I'm gonna give it away in spoilers, but it's this like gross creature scene. Safi doesn't think it's gross, but I think it's disgusting. And I think they could have played with this concept more, and that would have been really cool. But again, it's less like the peanut butter solution, even though they both have that in common where they're like a bunch of different movies. To me, I like the peanut butter solution a lot more than this movie because this movie is junky. It feels like really mean spirited, and it doesn't feel like there's any heart behind any of it. The peanut butter solution, it feels like it was written by somebody who had a heart, at
Yeah.
least. Does this movie feel like it was written by someone who has a heart?
I don't know. I guess I'm thinking more about it. It seems like it was something for Ben Savage to be in.
Fred Savage.
I mean Fred Savage, sorry, and his, and then also the fact that he's with his brother too, and I think his brother was in some stuff too, but I can't remember. But I just remember saying I recognized him right away. So
He doesn't look anything like Fred to me.
no, I think they seem like they're related.
Since they're related, I kind of wish the movie would have been more about them and their relationship.
Yeah, well, even the little boy, like I said, he was scared at night of the noise, and he would scream out. And he had to have a flashlight. He seemed to be more level-headed and mature than his brother.
Yeah,
That was
that was weird.
weird. But I just didn't like it because, of course, now that we're reviewing movies, I pay a lot more attention. And I was just, when parents watch something with their kid, which is like back when we were watching it together many years ago, I just, I watch it on the face of it. I don't really get into except if it's something like the music with the Lion King or,
So you're saying you're analyzing movies more. But with this movie, what I really went with was how it makes you feel watching it. it makes you not feel good watching it. It's not a good 80s movie. There are some really, really good moments that I wish would have been the whole movie. There's a sequence where a bunch of Safi didn't like this scene too, or as it seems, there's a sequence where a bunch of different kids get pranked, and it's hilarious, and it is very mean spirited, but they frame it to where it's really funny and where you don't really focus on the gross aspect because all these kids, they're like 5 years old,
They're
and
less than that. They're
and
like 3.
and they're all going to get beaten up by their parents off screen after this is over. And so that's the bad aspect. But when you're watching it, you just think about, oh, this is a funny prank. It's really it's really mean, and it's good. And then there's another sequence where the
Marvel,
kid
why don't you say what one of the pranks is? Because I don't think people,
really.
when they say saying they're going to get beaten
Well,
up by their parents.
I don't want to give anything away.
Just one of the
Okay,
one of the few
just
pranks.
one of the pranks.
Oh, these little kids,
There's
they're
a
like
prank.
3 years old. They're not
Yeah.
even in kindergarten.
That's what makes it really funny.
That was weird. I don't like that.
I kind of wish this movie would have been about pranking the parents, though.
Well,
Because,
what was one of the pranks, hon?
okay,
Do you remember?
one of the pranks. I remember all the pranks. It's just I don't want. There's one
Just
prank
one.
where there's peanut butter that's put all over the telephone where you put it in your ear, and so when the parent puts the telephone up to their ear, they're gonna get all this peanut butter in their ear, and it's gonna take them a million years to clean it out.
And remember, there's no cell phones. And if you recall, if any of you have seen the bottom of a telephone, there are little tiny holes. So you get peanut butter, and that's very hard to clean out.
That'll screw up the phone too, but and it was funny to me too because I've had some ear problems this year with with earwax and everything, and so that was it. It makes me know how it reminds me of how painful it'll be for the parent. But that's funny to me. And but then there's another sequence that's my favorite part of the movie where he sets up the trap for the monster in his little brother's room. I don't like the whole montage, but I like the trap how he has this lever and once something comes out from underneath his bed, the bed collapses.
Yeah, he's very. They show him he's extremely talented and genius in setting up this trap. He used his like I had mentioned that one of the things that was happened around the house was that somebody left his bicycle behind the car or behind the garage door, and when they open the garage door, the guy's sitting in his car and he
And
backs
he's backing up.
and he messed up the bike so bad that it was unusable. So he used pieces of his bicycle to set up this trap, and the way
Yeah.
he did it was very
And,
like he was an engineer or something. His parents didn't help him. He did this all on his own.
and to me, you said he's like a prankster. I would say that he's more of like a craftsman. He's kind.
Oh, he's that too.
Like the kid in Home Alone, kinda how he builds the different things and.
Well, I just think he's probably really smart but immature and doesn't know how to, doesn't. He's so smart he doesn't. And I've seen this before actually in real life where they don't really, they're so bored they just move on beyond everybody and they don't want to sit there doing these little mundane little school tasks and because they think they're stupid and so they look like they're dumb or they're
But
like pranksters and they don't do their work.
This I think you're getting a little off topic.
Well, whatever.
This movie, in general, it's not a good movie. I don't like it at all anymore. I would say I don't really want to watch it again at all. I'd rather watch the peanut butter solution again.
Yeah, he's really fixated on the peanut butter solution.
And then make you watch the peanut butter solution again.
No thanks. I'll skip both. There's
And
so many other good movies to watch anyway.
speaking of peanut butter, there's a sandwich in this movie where you put peanut butter and onions on a sandwich.
Ugh.
And I've had that sandwich I think twice. and it's actually pretty good, to
Okay,
be
well,
honest.
I thought there was just too many ideas and no clear definition of them at times, and no connection between them. And do you want me to go ahead and rank it or rate it? I
Yeah,
mean,
go ahead and rate it.
well, we watched this movie again so we could review it for this topic about are these kids movies? Are they really kids movies? Anyway, I watched this movie several days ago, but for the life of me, I could not figure out as how to rate this in terms of food. And so I just thought, maybe a sampler platter, but I haven't really had one of those lately. And even though I think anytime we've ever had a sampler platter at a restaurant, it's been a cohesive thing. In other words, if it's an Italian one, it's been like an Italian one or, Italian related, so everything on it was related. And then, or we've been to a
We were at that
Buffalo Wild Wings.
Mother's Day
Oh,
buffet.
well, that wasn't a sampler platter. That was a buffet. But anyway, I guess I could have. But I think we already did that for another movie.
I think you did.
Yeah, well, I did because, well, they tried their best. It's just too bad. So anyway, I just decided that let's say you buy a big pack of different kinds of jelly beans, and like 100, for example. And I like jelly beans, so I buy them frequently. And why not? Because it's supposed to be a kids movie, and there's lots of kids in it. All the monsters in the movie are kids, really, basically, except for the main mafia ones who are running this weird.
Howie wasn't a kid.
And Hallie isn't a kid
I don't think
either.
they're all kids. I think
Most,
they were they had kid kind of voices,
yeah,
but they weren't really kids. That's not see a lot of confusing stuff in this movie.
right. But so anyway, why not rate this in terms of a pack of 100 jelly beans? So anyway, you know that in a pack of 100 jelly beans, they don't have a flavor connection to each other. There's spicy ones, there's sweet ones, and there's weird ones like grass or dirt. So, like this movie, they represent a mishmash of unclear and not thought out ideas with no oversight and editing in the development of a more cohesive movie. Plus, the bad jelly beans in it represent some of the bad pranks on little kids, especially babies. They had one with the baby, and the baby was like, I'd say it wasn't sitting up, so I don't think it could even be over one. And but it was fully dressed. That was really weird too. That what happens? The monsters would come out at night. So
I think
the baby had a dress on. It was just weird. It like fully dressed like they were going to go to church or go to get their photographs taken at a studio
in
or
the
something.
same way that another prank that there we get another call. Sorry about the interruptions, people. We can't control these uh, faceless, uh,
Stupid calls.
fake callers. They just constantly happen throughout the day at any time.
It's like a rooster never shuts up.
But I think that the whole baby thing, I don't think it was about pranking the baby. I think it's like, because babies, like newborns, they cry all the time at night, and usually like a parent has to get up and take care of them, put them back to sleep. That sounds kind of weird.
Well, I don't know why they have them in a dress during the middle of the night. I mean, this is a.
Well, so maybe they're just saying that the monsters are the real reason that babies cry at night.
Oh yeah, that could be. Who knows? That's what I say. There's so many ideas. Some are thought out a lot, but
Another
not enough.
Horror concept too. That's not really a kids movie concept.
And some of them are not at all, and they're just like I said, some of these bad jelly beans. So apparently Marco should really speak to this. He did the research. I saw it for a little bit, but this movie was made using several millions of dollars, but it only made, I don't think it made $1 million. It made less than $1 million.
So yeah, it was made with $8 million, it only made 700,000 or so.
And I think these pranks that the
Yeah,
monsters did, because they showed a few of them, they may have turned off people, especially parents, and turned them off into taking their kids to see the movie, or maybe they got horrible
and
reviews.
to be fair,
I don't know.
I think that their parents were right for doing that because I really don't know what this movie was aiming for.
Yeah, really.
Just like the peanut butter solution, and we'll ask the question: is this a kids movie at the end? After I do my rating, I was thinking about this. I was easily able to say that this movie is 100% junk food.
Hmm.
But then I thought you can't just say junk food because there's a meanness to this movie that is unparalleled. A lot of people say Matilda is mean spirited, but Matilda has an arc where at the end it's a very, very happy ending. And so, with this movie, I don't know, it just leaves you with a nasty feeling. And so I rated this movie an entire box of Hostess snowballs.
Eh,
And now Safi likes snowballs.
yeah,
I
but they don't.
hate
They're not.
snowballs.
But they're not as good as they used to be.
Yeah, they're not as good as they used to be, is the number one issue. And that's exactly like this movie. Excuse me. See, every time I do reviews, this happens. But they're blue snowballs because the main monster is blue. And so the thing is, you have this exterior of these coconut flakes and this colored marshmallow. And there's no reason for the color on the marshmallow, by the way. There's no blueberry flavor. There's no blue anything flavor.
And right now they're orange. You can buy orange ones because why? Halloween.
You can buy a bunch of different types of flavors.
But these are like special for the season.
But
It's not a flavor. It's
this
just the same.
this marshmallow is pointless. And then you have the coconut flakes that spill everywhere, and they stick to your teeth, and they're just not good. And then underneath that, there's this huge cold interior of chocolate cake. And that represents the meanness and the pranks in the movie. That the outside is really like the comedy and the sort of like the concepts in general, but then you get this meanness inside. And then in the center there's this tiny, like tiny pea-sized amount of cream.
Yeah, they've really decreased the cream.
And the cream, there used to be a ton of cream in these snowballs, and now there's nothing.
Hardly at all,
And,
like a spoonful.
and so it feels like a huge gag that you eat. That they advertise that they have the cream inside, and you're eating it, and there's just nothing in there. And so you get through 6 of those in a box, and every single one feels like a joke. It feels like a mean trick on you. So, now we ask the question, is this a kids movie, Safi?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's just not a movie for anybody really. It's a movie for Howie Mandel, who's who's actually very talented. Howie Mandel. Now, only thing I've seen him in are these. He's a judge for like these entertainment shows where they bring in entertainment from all over and they pick out. It ends up a contest and they end up getting the best one. They win, and then. But he's like a germaphobe, and some of the stuff they do in this movie is really germy and gross. And he's like, he won't even shake her hand, and he's really. And then it was kind of like a vehicle for uh, the Savage Boys. I think it like those little girls, the twins
The
who were in all
Olsen
these
twins.
movies, the Olsen twins, but they were actually what they did. There's a lot more.
Their movies were really good.
Yeah, they were really good movies. They were good stories.
Not the ones they made when they were teenagers. The ones that they made when they were little kids were
Yeah,
really good.
and it was kind of like, to me, it was like that. It was just something else because he's really good. The older boy, well now he's a man, but they're both men, but he was really really good and very confident, and he and that show was really good.
I would say that this movie is not a kids movie.
Yeah.
I think that this should have been an adult comedy, if anything.
Yeah, they could have done that. That's what I'm saying, and you're saying is the ideas that were presented in the movie were not well thought out, and they
Yeah.
didn't go together, and so that makes it very difficult for people to want to pay attention to. And
I
what
mean,
what you
you
do
just
tell him he did some. Marco does a lot more research and puts a lot more thought because this is what he likes and wants to do in his life is make movies. But apparently, this movie was an inspiration for Monsters Inc., which
yeah,
is a good
and
series of movies.
that just tells you you can take these cool ideas and you can actually make something out of them.
That's good.
But what I was actually gonna say was I can't remember now because you interrupted me.
I'm sorry.
But so now we'll do spoiler alert. I just have one thing. The scene that really grossed me out was the one where the monster had the face that was a human face, and then underneath that was a monster's face. And this scene in general, it had very realistic 80s horror effects, and so it made me feel like it became a horror movie at this point. And then there's even a flamethrower that's used to burn the monster up, and that's how the monster dies. And so I really think that this movie was confused, and that's why this movie ultimately was a huge flop. I mean, you say that this is a movie is a vehicle for these people. They didn't even make the money back. They didn't even make anything off of this movie. They probably lost or whatever. They didn't make anything off of this movie because this movie is just not one thing. It's a bunch of different things, and that's a common thread in these kids movies that we'll continue to look at with movies like Big Top Pee Wee, Garbage Pail Kids, and then there's another one. But this movie really demonstrates that, and I would never watch this movie again unless I was really in the mood to watch it. Because this movie is a failure. It could have been something, but it just isn't.
Okay. Well,
What should people do, Safi?
not watch it.
No, they should like this video and they should subscribe to our channel. Instead of watching Little Monsters, go to some of our videos and just fill up the time that you would have watched Little Monsters with our videos. Because I can guarantee you that our videos are a lot more thought out and a lot more mature and a lot nicer than this movie. So,
Okay, everybody. Well,
goodbye.
bye.